The full text is complete as Yen. Wishing everyone all the best, every day is happy. The exciting story now officially begins. The year I loved Lu like Yen the most, I lost my memory. My best friend spoke in my ear, telling me all the lovesick and love-afflicted actions I had done while pursuing Lu like Yen. He said that he was completely in love with her, but people only saw him as a decoration. Finally, he sighed and lightly tapped my forehead. "Stop running after her." I hesitated a bit, then asked, "Who is Lu Nguyen?" At that moment, the hospital room door slowly opened. Hai Wai Kui pretended to be surprised and teased, "Thursday Lu is here. You also took the time to stop by." Then, the close friend's eyes turned to the man standing next to the general girl. "A busy person like you even came here on his own. No wonder. Anyway, since Miss Lu, Lan and General Kai didn't regret anything, how come General Kai didn't come to thank you?" Hai Wai Kui mocked and said, "You guys came at the right time. If you were a little later, perhaps John Lan would have been discharged from the hospital." Hearing those words, my eyes turned to reply. He was wearing a well-fitted suit and gold-rimmed glasses. Even though he heard Hai Wai Kui's sarcastic words, he still kept a smile on his face, looking very calm and leisurely. "I came here specifically to thank John Lan. I heard that he is about to be discharged from the hospital. It seems that his injury is not very serious." Hai Wai Kui quickly explained the reason why Lan was injured and had to be hospitalized. "Just because I couldn't escape in time. In fact, in the critical moment when the advertising billboard collapsed, Lu like Yen closely protected her moonlight." Uncle Kai replied, "As for me, I will protect my girlfriend with all my strength." In the end, Lu and Yen, both talented and beautiful people, were both safe and sound. But I became the victim of meaninglessness. Uncle Kai walked over and stood next to me next to Hai Wai Kui. Gently told me, "John Lan, everything has been clarified, the responsibility belongs to the brand. Lu Nguyen has sent someone to handle it. He gave me a settlement agreement. This is not a big deal. Yen and I have discussed it. You just sign this agreement first. After that, we will compensate you appropriately. If it weren't for your brave actions, things probably wouldn't have gotten to this point." Uncle Kai replied, using a gentle tone, clearly defining the boundary between the two of us. Unintentionally showing confidence and coldness through every word. Facing two strangers in front of me, my emotions surged like constantly fluctuating ocean waves. An inexplicable contraction made me suddenly frown. Seeing that I was silent and didn't say anything, Uncle Kai replied and calmly put the agreement aside, as if he had predicted that I would sign it. He calmly said, "Yan and I still have to go on a business trip. I don't mind you resting." Lu like Yen stood to the side, her face calm and unruffled. "Simply instruct, I'll rest well, don't cause trouble anymore." After that, she and Uncle Kai left. The two people's departure made Hai Wai Kui angry to the point of fiery anger. "John Lan, are you easy to bully? That man even insulted you right in front of you, yet you have absolutely no intention of resisting." I was silent for a moment, then calmly replied, "Even though I want to be angry with you, I actually don't know him." Hai Wai Kui took a cold breath. Finally, he realized what I said. "Who exactly is Lu Nguyen?" It wasn't like I was pretending to be sad in a dramatic way, but I actually lost my memory. The doctor's diagnosis made Hai Wai Kui crazy with joy. "Your brain is a big problem." A question mark appeared above my head. Hai Wai Kui said in a deep voice, "While your mind is still awake, I advise you to quickly stay away from Lu like Yen." After that, he explained to me in detail the complicated love-hate relationship between me, Lu Nguyen and Kai Bo. Uncle Kai replied that his girlfriend, Lu Nguyen, was once his childhood friend. Unfortunately, fate is cruel. In his second year of college, Kai Bo's family went bankrupt and had to leave the country. As for me, at that time I had just entered college, and after 4 years of pursuit, I reluctantly won the heart of this tall beauty. At that time, the internet was booming. Lu and Yen and I had the idea of starting a business. We rolled together, joined parties to attract investment day after day. All day and all night, from midnight drinking with customers to having to go to the emergency room. In the end, we were honored as talented men and beautiful women in the gangster world. General Lu, these nicknames have become our trademarks. At that time, we were praised as talented boys and girls in the world. The year the company went public, I planned to propose to Lu like Yen. But that year, Uncle Kai returned to his country. His return in the blink of an eye wiped away all the efforts and sweat I had put in over the years. The company that I once co-founded with Lu like Yen, Kai replied calmly saying that he did not find any meaning in staying in the country. Yet he easily took my position, turning me, a founder, into an ordinary small manager. Despite the past, there are a few ripples in my heart, but they cannot cause big waves. Hai Waikui looked at my calm face and carefully asked about my feelings. I pondered for a moment, then without hesitation answered, they really deserve to die. Meeting Lu and Yen again was when I was discharged from the hospital. She carried a bunch of flowers, hand in hand, and Kai Bo replied, coming together. Uncle Kai smiled and opened his mouth to say, John Wan is about to be discharged from the hospital. We can't come empty-handed. It's very nice, so I specially chose this flower basket. His eyes stopped on the hospital bed, where the contract was empty. His face immediately became gloomy. He blamed John Wan. What's wrong with you? Why haven't you signed this agreement yet? The brand partner has put pressure on us. What do you mean by deliberately delaying it? You really don't understand the severity of what you do. I ignored Uncle Kai's question. Then, I turned to look at Lu as Yen. She raised her head and looked back at me. The voice was a little impatient. What's going on? I nodded firmly and said, let's break up. Lu like Yen was stunned, standing still in place. Just when Hai Waikui had just returned, he heard this sentence. He excitedly stood next to me, pointed at us and wanted to speak, but was interrupted by Lu like Yen. What's going on again? Hai Waikui was angry and threw the medical record on the ground. Uncle Kai replied with a surprised look, observed me carefully, then looked back at Lu like Yen. Nu Yen, we should go consult a doctor. Lu Nu Yen nodded slightly, walked out of the hospital room with Uncle Kai, and gently closed the door. Has Uncle Kai's voice coming from outside already lost his memory? No way! Why do everyone around you still remember you clearly, but he is the only one who forgets you? He continued to say, even if he completely lost his memory, according to John Lyon's personality, it would be impossible to forget you. Maybe he is pretending to lose his memory, maybe he wants to use this method to hold on to you. A moment of silence. Lu Nuyen's calm, heavenly voice rang out, he can't forget me. Uncle Kai replied, continuing, I understand you're worried about John Wan, but if he can use this method to deceive you now, will it be even more outrageous next time? He advised Lu like Yen, turn around, a man like him has such a narrow heart and asks like that. Nu Yen, you're busy with work, I'll talk to him kindly. Lu Nuyen was silent for a moment, then coldly said, just handle it yourself. Uncle Kai's divisive words passed through the door here. Hai Waikui was so angry that he was angry, but I didn't care. Taking the opportunity, I asked what I was most interested in, is the company we founded together listed? It's been a while, I'm an annual shareholder, there should be a decent dividend, right? Waikui coldly snorted. Of course, if it weren't for your company doing so well, I wouldn't pretend to be superior and would proactively ask to join your company," he said with a satisfied face. "Finally, you've thought it through and want to use your power to chase the enemy out to take back the position of Thuong Phong." I interrupted him and calmly said, "I'm already this rich. Instead of arguing with him, why don't I let them help me make money? Wouldn't that be great?" When I arrived at Uncle Ho's office, I discovered that Lu and Yen had left a long time ago. "John Lacken, Nguyen is very busy these days. If it's not urgent, please don't bother her." The tone of the doctor's reply was a bit challenging. "Even though you have a relationship with Nguyen's position, your approach is somewhat narrow-minded, making it difficult for her to decide." I calmly replied, "Mr. Kai, don't worry. I won't delay Nguyen's matters. The company was co-founded by me and Nguyen. I hope everything goes well with her. How can I cause trouble for her? My attitude is steadfast." Uncle Kai replied with a smiling expression and handed me a document. "Hope you can understand. Please sign this liability waiver contract." I shook my head, smiled and said, "Sorry, I can't sign." Uncle Kai replied, looking disappointed. "You want me to get out of the company through these things. But I won't back down easily." I interrupted him, "Even though I have amnesia, I am not ignorant." In the hospital, I reviewed my partner's documents. I continued to say, Uncle Kai responded urgently and wanted me to sign. "It's obvious that this matter has something to do with him. Such a big project, who is the contractor? General Kai's family doesn't seem to be wealthy. The family must be very happy to accept this big job." I deliberately mentioned it, but the response's face changed slightly. I continued, "This incident was messed up. It's hard to explain in any way, isn't it? Using my signature to solve everything, satisfying everyone, is just using me as a price. But what do you rely on?" I looked at Kai Uncle's reply and gently asked. Kai Uncle replied, "Do you think you still have faith in my place?" He took a deep breath, his tone carrying a bit of helplessness. "John Lacken, I don't know what you're talking about, it's just an unexpected thing. Do you have energy or not? I have a way to solve this myself." Before he could finish speaking, he heard Lu Nguyen's voice ring out. "John Lacken, maybe you should think carefully about your problem. Nguyen, you still want to break up with me? Can you rely on a little love from the past to keep clinging and refusing to leave? Why did you reply? Turn around and leave." Its words were as gentle as the passing wind. "Nguyen no longer loves you. If you insist on holding on, isn't that just humiliating you?" I smiled faintly, not paying attention to his words. I turned on my phone. Inside was still quiet as before, only messages were continuously sent from the work team. At the top pin position is Liu's profile picture like Yen. I opened the chat history, remembering the care and attention I gave her before I lost my memory. But her answer was short and cold. Those short lines are like communication between superiors and subordinates, cold and distant. Hai Wai-Kui took me to the elevator door and advised, "If there's a problem and you don't remember it, call me." I smiled and agreed. The building's housekeeper helped me swipe my card and took me upstairs. I used my fingerprint to unlock the door. Before my eyes suddenly became clear, the river scene appeared before my eyes, making my heart relax. The door lock made a soft ticking sound and the door opened. "It's Lu like Yen has returned, she looks tired, her hair is a bit messy." Seeing me, Lu Yen's voice stopped. "Are you healed from your wound?" Her eyes looked at me coldly and strangely, as if she were looking at a stranger. "If you've lost your memory, how can you still remember the way home?" Her voice carried a hint of mockery. I politely said, "Miss Lu, I'm really sorry. It's the memory loss that makes you worry. It's not the falling that makes you stupid. Lu and Yen's eyes showed impatience. You're a grown man, why are you being so unreasonable? Lu like Yen's voice carried a bit of anger. If you're cured, you have to come to the company on time tomorrow. You're inherently not good at making arrangements. On the days you're not at the company, the doctor will handle everything for you. Lu Nuyen rubbed her temples, her voice carrying a bit of fatigue. I already told you, my uncle replied that he was my childhood friend. He treats me like family, why do you have to confront him? I nodded once. You're right. I shouldn't confront him. It doesn't matter whether he's a virgin or not. The important thing is that he can help me make money. Nuyen was stunned for a moment. After Ms. Lu finished speaking, she invited her to leave. My voice was a bit cold. Hai Weiqi said before losing his memory, I was a crazy person who loved this house. This is the wedding house I bought for us. In the moment we passed each other, Lu like Yen squeezed my arm. She frowned, impatience clearly showing on her face. What are you playing again? In a moment of silence, Lu and Yen let go of my hand as if throwing away a piece of trash. Stop it, you always like to play these games. What new trick do you want to use this time to attract my attention? Remembering the company tomorrow, she turned around and left without hesitation. At night when I go to bed, I try to reacquaint myself with my old life through my friends list. Just open a newly posted photo that popped up on the screen. In the photo, Lu Nuyen is smiling brightly. Leaning on the hero's shoulder, the two of them looked extremely well matched. Below someone commented, "What a beautiful couple, when will I get to eat your wedding candy?" I commented below, "Love at work is good, but don't let it affect your work, don't affect the company's dividend distribution." 3 seconds into the game, Lu Nuyen replied to my comment, "Are you crazy?" The next day, when I arrived at the company, I saw a workbook filled with documents. The person next to me turned to me and arrogantly ordered me, "John, these things are left to you. Don't forget the brand promotion this afternoon, go there yourself and follow closely." Having finished speaking, she looked dissatisfied. A small injury makes a fuss like a big deal. How many days have you been thinking? If everyone thought like you, wouldn't the company be in chaos? A woman wearing dark glasses sat next to her, her tone sarcastic. People are people with relationships, they can't be underestimated. Manager Van On spoke carefully. Just a little injury, but thinking about it for so many days, causing the general director to have to laugh at the brand because of you, what a lovesick person. Uncle Kai replied, I think what Hai Weiqi said is not wrong, it is true that I have a problem with my mind. Obviously I am the shareholder of the company, yet here I have to bow my head and humbly work for free, and yet others are insinuating me. I smiled brightly and said, it's a small wound. Try being hit by a big steel bar and see how it feels. If the company has a woman like you who likes to make excuses, the company will definitely go into chaos. The girl wearing black-rimmed glasses had my face turn blue and red. Uncle Kai replied out of nowhere, John Lacken, you just went to work and why are you having conflicts with your colleagues again? He came out to mediate. His face was full of understanding, appearing to protect the staff. You took a few days off, and your colleagues' workload increased a bit. Isn't that normal? We're all colleagues in the same company, why do we have to compare like that? When someone else scolded me, he stood and watched. It's always been said that I'm comparing. I raised my hand to applaud him. General Manager Kai is really a kind person, he just doesn't have good ears. Other people say bad things about me behind my back, you don't hear a word, do you? Do you like to take things from people who do favors like that? Do I need to build a tombstone for you? Uncle Kai's expression stiffened, as if he didn't expect that I now didn't respect him at all. Are you aiming at me again? Kai replied. Ah, I turned around. Lu Laikyan looked at me from above with contempt. She also has eyes and ears but doesn't use them properly. She only hears and sees what she wants. Uncle Kai replied suddenly as if he had someone's back. His whole person naturally stood up straighter, full of conceit. He smiled, holding Liu's hand like yen. It's okay, don't blame him, I'm used to it. Lu and Yen's thin lips pursed tightly. This company is where you place your authority. Why don't you let me refute? She ordered me, everyone come to my office now. The atmosphere in the office became heavy. When Lu and Yen entered, she had a cold expression on her face. With a stern face, he criticized, why not sign a liability waiver contract? Don't you know what loss the company will suffer due to your incompleteness? Jiang Lakan, I think you can at least distinguish between light and heavy. Lu Nuyen had a disappointed tone. Before, at least you knew what not to do. I nodded, suddenly understanding. Could it be that my previous behavior was like a deep-rooted habit to save face for you guys? I took out the documents I arranged last night and pointed out the contractor in charge of setting up the advertising tent. During construction, they did not follow our regulations and requirements, which led to the incident. Lu Nuyen frowned tightly and said, otherwise, this is just a sloppy job, not an accident. The words I just uttered, everyone had different expressions. Lu Laikyan couldn't help but frown and look at him. I told Kai again and replied, this project is in charge of General Kai. General Kai must bear at least 90% of the responsibility. Furthermore, this contractor seems to have a close relationship with General Director Kentucky. Lu Nuyen suddenly turned her head and looked towards Kai Bo. Uncle Kai's face darkened. Jiang Lakan, I know you're not happy that I took your place, but you can't act like that. The company's bidding process has regulations. I don't have that much power, how can I control the entire situation? Although Kai Bo replied that he was incompetent, he could rely on Lu's reputation as Yen to be bossy. I don't want to argue with Uncle Kai about these trivial matters. The corner of his lips curled up in a smile. Director Lai asked me to assist, why am I not pleased? How could you deliberately plot to harm General Director Kai? I don't look down on you, it's just that I think you lack strength but still try to appear knowledgeable. Duke doesn't deserve the position. Uncle Kai's face changed, his eyebrows furrowed. The assistant next to him also immediately stood up to defend him. Mr. Zhang, don't think that because you have a relationship with General Manager Lu, you can rely on old age to arbitrarily criticize others. General Kai's identity is too clear, everyone can clearly see that you are General Manager Liu's boyfriend. But does anyone in the company really admire you? A mocking voice rang out, making me feel unhappy. The surrounding colleagues were whispering loudly, all discussing the relationship between me and Lu Laikyan. She stood quietly by the window, staring at this clown show, but I just found it funny. I have arranged all the evidence, ready to clarify everything with these people. I stood up, my cold eyes scanning the people around me. I am Liu's ex-boyfriend like Yan and also a shareholder of the company. If I really wanted to use my power to crush you guys, I would have fired you a long time ago instead of standing here pointing 5 fingers. I announced my resignation. There was an immediate stir in the surrounding company. Ex-boyfriend? What do you mean? Lu Laikyan's voice trembled slightly, a bit of surprise appeared on her face. I calmly looked straight into her eyes, without hesitation. I said coldly, before leaving the hospital, I told you. We broke up. General Manager Lu, it's not because I can't stand the resentment, but because I realized that everyone here lacks will and brains. It is said that this whole company depends on me to survive, but why do I have to come back to be ridiculed by everyone? People may not have a brain, but they cannot be without a mind. Everyone here is like Lou. Like Yan, lacks the ability to think and judge. I walked out of Uncle Kai's office, with a bit of coldness on my face, and returned to my office. In the smallest and gloomiest space, filled with shoe folders. The workplace is empty, there's nothing. There's only one photo of me and Lou like Yen placed on the table. The smile in that moment has now faded. I conveniently threw the photo in the trash, grabbed my things and prepared to leave. However, just as I was about to step out of the office door, Lou like Yen appeared there. She suddenly grabbed my hand and said seriously, "John Wan, what are you causing trouble again?" Although I don't like Kai Uncle's answer, his working ability is something everyone recognizes. As a shareholder of the company, you should look at the whole. Her words reminded me not to let personal feuds affect the overall interests of the company. The employees in the company also responded on Kai Bo's side, angrily defending him. They thought that Mr. Kai had contributed a lot to the company, while I only knew about my personal feelings, putting him in such an awkward situation. Hai Waikui told me that, before I lost my memory, for the company's development, I almost sacrificed everything. If this company has to rely on a group of ignorant people, I would rather leave than waste my enthusiasm. Seeing that, I finished speaking leisurely and prepared to leave. However, Lu Nuyen held my arm tightly, her cold voice rang out, "John Wan, if you apologize to Uncle Kai now, I can forgive you this matter. Otherwise, once you leave this company, don't ever think about coming back." The corner of my mouth slightly curled up in a cold smile. It turns out there is such a good thing. My steps became light, leaving Lu and Yen to chase after me. When Hai Waikui knew I quit my job, he gave me a tight hug. "Congratulations, you're finally free from your suffering. It seems like losing your memory is a good thing for you. Finally, you're no longer bothered by that woman." Hai Waikui smiled and teased me, accepting the fruit brought by the beautiful little girl, her face complicated. "I really can't believe it, I was able to like that woman before." Hai Waikui nodded in agreement. "Before, it was like you were under a spell." Temporarily humbled and suffered, everything put Lu like Yen first. "I couldn't stand it anymore, I almost asked the teacher to cast a spell on you." "Don't tell me about her, I couldn't stand it either." "I can't listen anymore either." My resignation was not an impulsive decision but a choice after careful thought. The company we co-founded has unlimited potential, but Kai Bo's existence multiplies the risks. Therefore, I decided to give up my shares. When the company just listed, it earned some money. Many people looked at my shares. In the end, I chose to cooperate with one of them. The most generous investor who received a large amount of capital. After that, I signed up for a studio, starting my own entrepreneurial path. Even though I lost my memory, my professional ability was not lost. With Hai Waikui's companionship, we quickly received a number of projects and earned quite a lot of income. When I met Lu like Yen again, that day was in a busy commercial center. I met Uncle Kai and asked to walk around with her. When she saw me, she seemed to freeze in place, her expression was extremely cold, her body was extremely cold. She questioned, "Who gave you permission to follow me? Even if you admit your mistakes to me here, I won't." I couldn't help but interrupt her thoughts about death. "This is a shopping mall, of course I came to shop." However, Lu like Yen coldly sneered, not believing my words. Uncle Kai replied, reaching out to stroke Liu's hair like Yen, and asked me with concern, "John Wan, do you know? Lately, Nguyen and I have been very worried about you. Are you okay?" I watched them curiously, staying away from this crazy couple. Life is much more pleasant. Lu Nuyen was stunned for a moment, his eyes filled with anger. It was clear that he had. Making mistakes is still causing pressure here. She took a deep breath and continued. Okay, I know you want to return to the company. Yes, lately, you've been working very hard every day. There's still 1 week left before we get a contract with GFN. Remember to finish writing the plan well. I was amazed at her clumsiness. In my heart, anger burned. Hai Weiqi was so angry that she almost went up and scolded Lu Laikyan, but I kept calm. I pulled him and nodded in agreement. Okay, I'll finish it as soon as possible. Lu Yan's worried face gradually calmed down, exuding a demeanor as if she was in control of everything. You can put the calm and good first, I'm very happy. They left the office. Hai Weiqi said angrily. Make a plan for her? Have you lost your memory or are you confused? I helplessly shrugged my shoulders. I only agreed to do the plan, not to mention who I would do it for. Well, I didn't say I did it for her. The anger on Hai Weiqi's face gradually turned into a smile. He winked and said, This is so good, it makes them fight like ants with hot claws. The contract with GFN is not only Lu Laikyan, I also keep an eye on it. Perhaps because he saw that I seemed weak, he replied that he thought he could manipulate me. He thinks I'm still the same man infatuated with Lu Laikyan. He was afraid that I would leave the company and no one would be able to work for him. He was worried about me coming back and rekindling my old love with Lu Laikyan. Therefore, he can only silently provoke me in the dark. And, your heart is so generous and willing to make plans for me in such a situation. She said. Wait until we have a partnership with GFN and we will give me shares. As for his provocation, I paid absolutely no attention, completely focused on planning. Over the past few days, Lu Yan have not proactively contacted me. It seemed certain that I would fall in love and surrender my plans to her. Until the day before the bidding, Lu Nuyen called, with an elegant attitude. John Lacken, send the plan to my email. I couldn't help but laugh lightly. Lu Laikyan, don't you understand me? Mockery said. What's the plan, Ms. Lu? Did you forget that I'm no longer your employee? Lu Nuyen was silent for a moment, her tone full of anger. John Lacken, what do you want to do? Tomorrow's cooperation is very important to our company. There absolutely cannot be any incidents, otherwise the shareholders will be extremely dissatisfied. With his response, I happily clapped my hands. Really? That's great. Lu Nuyen was so angry that she had to hang up the phone. Early the next morning, I appeared on time at the door of GFN Company. I met Hai Weiqi, but by chance I met Lu Laikyan and Kai Uncle replied. When Uncle Kai replied, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief and his eyes flashed with anticipation. Jiang Lacken, give me the plan, quickly. I always believe that you won't do anything stupid. I smiled without saying anything, avoiding his hand. I teased Yan with Liu's worried expression and replied. It seems like you guys are not fully prepared. This time the cooperation with GFN will probably fall into my hands. As expected, I succeeded in gaining the opportunity to cooperate with GFN. When leaving, Lu Laikyan's eyes were as sharp as cold stars, while Kai replied, gritting his teeth and enduring. He was praised as an outstandingly talented person in front of GFN's senior managers, but was speechless. Successfully gaining the opportunity to cooperate with GFN, my reputation and that of Hai Weiqi Design Studio also became famous, spreading throughout the industry. When leaving the company, Lu Yan's company fell into difficulty again. In addition, previous business negotiations were all chaired by me, and the planning was also fully responsible for me. many customers started to trust me. After trial and error, they realized that not only was the price reasonable, but the quality was superior. They began to massively choose to cooperate with me. Hiwaikwi and I are as busy as two spinning tops that don't stop spinning, but I don't want to work too hard. I decided to definitely recruit talented people. I offered attractive compensation, which attracted a lot of applicants. There were even a few employees from the old company who came to apply. Looking at the surprised faces of these people, I gently tapped on the table. My old company had such outstandingly talented people, he replied. Why did you quit your job? A few people bowed their heads in shame. It turned out that after I left, the company fell into decline and did not recover. Collaborative projects constantly encounter problems, and plans are constantly rejected. At that time, they suddenly realized that their previous success would not have been possible without my support. Because their work was not going well, the doctor blamed them for it, causing them to not only lose their bonus but also have their performance points deducted. When the company's performance declined, salaries were also cut many times. Finally, they understood that behind the splendor of the previous company was my silent dedication. Hiwaikwi smiled and said to me, "If it weren't for you, with Liu's arrogant personality like Yan, how could we have built such a large company? I understand clearly in my heart that those people's abilities are truly normal. So I don't keep them." Uncle Kai replied that he took over the situation of the company and also interfered in the recruitment of his competitors, only recruiting people who like to flatter him. So that company will definitely fail. I completed a large order and earned a lot of money. While Hiwaikwi and I were celebrating, Lu Nuyen called again. She coldly said, "John Lacken, how long do you want to cause trouble?" Previously, I heard that after the return of the doctor, I had an argument with Lu and Yen out of anger. After the argument ended, Lu Nuyen directly took her uncle on a business trip for a month. But because of Lu and Yen, I bowed my head and turned back, drinking some wine. I lazily said, "We broke up. If there's something wrong, let's talk frankly." Lu Nuyen seemed to laugh. "After breaking up, don't you always come back crying and beg me again? Okay, you just did that because you were unhappy with the doctor's response, right? I agree with you that if he leaves the company, you can continue to take his position. Are you satisfied now?" Right as she spoke, the girl Hiwaikwi called me and put a green grape in my mouth. "Brother, open your mouth. The waiter in front of us has a delicate, gentle, and endearing appearance." I got lost in the beautiful beauty and was about to open my mouth when I heard Lu Like Yen's somewhat angry voice. "Who is the person next to you, John Lacken? You use this despicable way to attract my attention. It's really childish." I hung up the phone without hesitation. Hiwaikwi breathed a sigh of relief. "I'm afraid that if you just receive a call from Lu Like Yen, you'll rush home immediately." I wonder. Was I really like that before? Hiwaikwi firmly nodded. That night, Lu and Yen called me several times, but I ignored them and didn't care. But what I didn't expect was that something happened to her. Last night's hangover still hasn't gone away. The morning sunlight shines through the curtains and falls on my face. Hiwaikwi suddenly rushed in. He grabbed my shoulder tightly and stammered loudly. "I haven't, do you know? Lu Like Yen has already met with retribution. Quickly check the news." He quickly put the phone in front of me. The news headline says, "Last night, at the commercial filming scene, a lamp fell straight down and hit Lu Like Yen. She was seriously injured and had to be hospitalized. It's true retribution, this time there's no one to help her anymore." Hiwaikwi's mood is very good. My mood also suddenly became happier. the bad girl finally received the appropriate punishment. When night fell, the doctor appeared before me with a pale and worried face. "John Lacken, Nguyen wants to see you." I frowned and replied, "No time." "John," he quickly said, "you have to go, John Wahan. I know you still love Lu as deeply as Yen. How can you not be moved? You should come immediately." Uncle Kai's words revealed a bit of urgency. "If it weren't for you, Yen wouldn't be in this situation. She just talked to you on the phone last night. You can't avoid responsibility." I was upset. The bodyguard chased him out, but Uncle Kai looked at me with eyes full of resentment. "John Wahan, as Yen knows, the advertising tent was set up by my younger brother. If you don't go, she will definitely denounce my younger brother. You have to go." In the end, I still went to the hospital, not because of Kaibo's threat, but because I felt it was necessary to explain clearly to Lu Like Yen, ending this troubled relationship. Lu Like Yen lay on the hospital bed. In just a short time, she looked haggard and could not bear it. As soon as she saw me, her breathing became rapid. "Lan, I've known for a long time that you would come to visit me." There was nostalgia and warmth in her eyes. "Do you remember when we first started our business? On winter days when there was no heating, we sat close together to warm up. When we were short of money, I would run everywhere to borrow money. Those times were really happy." I sheepishly scratched my head. "Miss Lu, I really don't remember what you said very clearly." But Lu and Yen didn't believe it. She looked at me intently and determinedly. "I know you're just saying goodbye. During this time, I've been thinking a lot. Maybe I was really wrong before, but now I finally realized that the person I truly love in my heart is you." Between me and Uncle Kai, I replied that it was just an attachment to the past. I suddenly shouted, "Stop." I took out a diagnostic sheet from my pocket and threw it hard at her face. "Please look carefully, Ms. Lu. I really have lost my memory. Therefore, your memories no longer mean anything to me." Liu's face like Yen suddenly became stiff, her eyes flashed with panic and fear. She whispered out of control, "No way, I love you the most, I can't forget you." I put the diagnosis sheet away. "Maybe you treated me too badly, Lu Like Yen. If you were good to me, how could I bear to forget you?" Lu and Yen were stunned and seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes were red. In the end, Lu Like Yen chose to sue Kai's younger brother. This accident severely injured her right leg. The doctor told her that even under modern medical conditions, it was impossible for her leg to completely recover. When Kai Bakda's younger brother was arrested, the relationship between Kai Bakda and Lu Nguyen became extremely tense. Now she has become disabled. "Do you think I'm still by your side? Why are you dreaming?" Uncle Kai replied mercilessly and pushed Lu Like Yen away. "When my family went bankrupt and went abroad, it was not because of force, nor to avoid bothering you, but because we criticized you for being useless." He mercilessly criticized Lu Like Yen. These words almost made Lu and Yen extremely miserable. She led and chased after Kaibo replied. As a result, he accidentally fell from the second floor and ended up in the hospital bed again. The nurse rushed from her emergency room. I was found in the phone book, informed that Lu Like Yen needed to see me urgently. I couldn't help but feel a little hesitant, but in the end I still decided to find out. Lu Nguyen quietly looked at me. Those eyes were full of regret and couldn't bear to say goodbye. I admit I was wrong. I regret it, give me one more chance. Can we get back together? I was surprised and speechless. What are we doing together? Taking care of a disabled person like you? My words were like a strong blow to Liu's heart like Yen. Her pale face became even whiter than paper. Her pupils were shaking, as if she had been fatally injured. Lu Like-yen, don't say I have lost my memory. Even if I don't lose my memory, I don't need someone as bad as you. Liu's eyes, like Yen's, can almost break people's hearts. His eyes were red, full of anger and pain. In the past, just because of a call from Uncle Kai, she could completely abandon me and leave with a high fever. Because Kai replied that she was not happy, she did not hesitate to remove my position and give it to him. She always said, "Can you not be so petty?" Unlike Uncle Kai's answer. When that pillar fell towards me, she only worried about protecting Kaibo. And when I fell, I saw her cold, indifferent eyes. Yes, I finally recovered my memory, but I hated her lies and coldness even more. I founded a company. The company gradually developed strongly. However, Lu and Yen were ultimately unable to withstand the struggles within the company. Finally declared bankruptcy and was in debt. Facing countless difficulties, Kaibo replied that, combined with her normal abilities, big brands no longer wanted to cooperate with her. Step by step, she fell into her current difficult situation. I once witnessed Uncle Kai holding a glass of wine and leaning on an older woman wearing a swimming ring. Later, it was said that he was abused by a rich lady to the point that chickens flew away and dogs barked. Finally, sneak away and escape. 3 years have passed. The company developed stably. After a round of capital raising, Hai Wei and I both began to consider listing shares. On the day of successful stock listing, Lu Like-yen limped to find me. Her eyes were red. "Lan, I really regret it. If it wasn't for Uncle Kai's response, we wouldn't have gotten to this point." She remembers when we started in the rented apartment. Days spent wrapped in blankets, warm in the house. "I don't want to remember the past anymore." Smiling and said, "But I don't regret it." Her face turned pale and she staggered away. From then on, we were no longer in contact. As for me, of course I am not distracted, doing my best to make money and develop the company. The school's beauty queen, Lu Nuyen, has died. She died during the last winter break of her 12th grade year. But I can see her soul. She doesn't remember the cause of death or her killer. She couldn't go home either, so she clumsily clung to me. On the first day back to school of the new semester, the homeroom teacher in the evening class informed us about the sudden death of Lu Like-yen. The classroom immediately erupted with a guy talking loudly. Everyone scrambled to discuss Liu's death. Like-yen. Some of the girls who had good relationships with her started sobbing. At this time, someone suddenly asked, "Teacher, how did Lu Nuyen die?" The teacher frowned, seemingly thinking about making arrangements. Waited for a long time, still unable to open my mouth. At this time, a girl guessed, making everyone's eyes turn to her. "I heard that a body was discovered in Famkin Park last week. Lu Like-yen's house is nearby, maybe." The girl's words suddenly stopped, but the meaning was very clear. All eyes turned to the teacher, waiting for his answer. Then, the teacher gently nodded. Immediately, the class exploded with a new round of discussion. I looked at Lu Like-yen, standing idly in her seat, her hands clutching the hem of her skirt, looking left and right in panic. The next moment, she suddenly caught my eye. The whole class suddenly fell silent. In my ears, Lu Like-yen's choked question rang out, "Can you see me?" I stood up, the chair making a sharp noise as I pushed it out, attracting the attention of everyone in the classroom. I looked at the clock and then looked back at everyone in the class with surprised or scared eyes. Finally, I looked straight at the homeroom teacher and said one sentence, "There's nothing else to do, I'll go home." Having finished speaking, he didn't care about anything else, grabbed his bag and left the classroom. It's so cold. The moment he stepped out of the classroom, a whisper rang out from behind. After all, we were classmates, we met every day, but we lost him, and there was no reaction at all. Speak a little less. I heard that he joined the gangsters outside. Isn't it said that he also kills people? What kind of sympathy can a murderer have? How scary. Closing the room door, noisy conversations are isolated. I staggered back to my rented room off campus, leaving behind the bright campus, thinking about what to eat for dinner. When entering a residential area, I saw a sneaky man watching a woman with her head down looking at her phone. The street lights and surveillance cameras on the road ahead were broken a while ago. The nearest light is the lobby of the building in front. I took a few steps to the man's side. I grabbed the hand that was about to touch the woman's shoulder. He raised his head in panic and looked at me. I didn't say anything, just threw him aside in the grass. The woman in front heard the noise and immediately turned around. When she saw me, she obviously stopped breathing, then turned around and quickly ran towards the building. The man in the grass also frantically rolled and ran away. Wow, so handsome. Lu and Yen's voice suddenly rang out. She poked her head out from my hand, looking up at me, deliberately. Han, just one glance is enough to scare him away. He's so handsome. I was entangled with Lu like Yen, to be more precise, I was entangled with Lu like Yen's ghost. She floated next to me and followed me home. All the way, keep chirping like a noisy little bird. Ko Tin Ha, do you remember me? I'm Lu like Yen, your classmate. You can see me, right? Don't pretend you don't hear anymore. Just now you looked straight into my eyes. I've been dead for a while. Only you can see me. Could it be that you are the one with the yin and yang eyes like in the novel? I've never talked to you before, are you this silent towards living people? Ko Tin Ha, I walked to the front door of the house. When I took out the key to open the door, Lu Nuyen suddenly raised her voice. Finally, I looked towards her. She stood in front of me, crouched with her hands hidden behind her back, and said in a pitiful voice, "Can you let me in?" I frowned and said, "Aren't you a ghost?" She breathed a sigh of relief, her tone full of resentment. "That's right, it's because I became a ghost, I can't enter my house anymore." Then, she suddenly changed her tone. I read a novel before, which said that if a ghost wants to enter someone else's house, it must get the homeowner's consent. I don't know if it's true, let me try. I said, "I'm a man, is there any problem?" She replied, "I'm a ghost, do I still need to care about these things?" So I opened the door, stood at the door as Lu Nuyen requested and told her, "Please come in, Lu Nuyen." She carefully entered my house and cheered loudly. She excitedly walked in and out until the neighbor across the street opened the door and looked at me with strange eyes. I stood blankly at the door without closing it. Finally, I had to say one thing, I have to close the door. The neighbor opposite opened the door and was surprised, then replied stupidly, "Yes, okay." The main culprit was Lu like Yen, who happily ran into the living room. Lu like Yen said that she did not know why she became a ghost, nor did she remember the cause of her death or who killed her. I saw in the novel that ghosts like me all have attachments when alive. Do you say I have any attachments? Looking for the killer? Lu like Yen hung her chest from the ceiling, staring enviously at the late-night meal on the tea table. If a ghost had saliva, it would have dripped all over my face. I silently ate the grilled skewers. Lu and Yen are not close, we only know that she is very popular in class, has excellent achievements, is active and smiles openly. I recall passing by the school notice board and accidentally glancing at her description on the obituary. Willow is like Yen. The first time I called her name, She had nowhere to go. Star? She nodded, looking miserable. Until you can go home or reincarnate, you can stay. I said. Other than my room, you can go anywhere else. I don't know why I did that, but from then on, Lu Like Yen stayed at my house. Lu Like Yen started going to school and studied with me every day. Going to class, she sat in her seat and listened to the lecture. On that desk, there is a vase of flowers. Every day there is a fresh flower in the vase. I heard the order will change every day, until the university exams end. The whole class took turns bringing flowers according to student number, except me. Lu Like Yen is very happy. She said it felt great to be remembered by others, as if in her short life of 17 years, she had finally left something in the hearts of others. I do not express my approval or disapproval. I know very well that if you can truly leave something in the hearts of others, other than silence and darkness, you can only be the same. Ko Tin Ha, what is your impression of me? She asked me. I thought for a moment and then replied, I'm not familiar with it, but now you're a talkative ghost. Lu Like Yen said she had the goal of doing one good deed every day, but now that she's dead, this will be transferred to me. I'm not interested. It was too harsh last night. You still saw the grievances and took action. It's not a matter of finding anything unpleasant, I said. That road is the way I have to go home. If something happens, that road will be full of police. During that time, I don't want. Every time I was stopped to ask questions, since elementary school, my height, physical strength and strength had exceeded X compared to my peers. At first I didn't pay attention, until one day when there was a conflict with a classmate. When I was 10 years old, I punched and broke the bridge of a classmate's nose. His parents scolded me for being a monster, growing up so fast, as tall as an adult. So how can you attack a small child like this? Is there any child in anyone's family that looks like him? As muscular as a wall. I heard my son say, before I saw him fighting with bad kids outside the school. What a cruel act. Could it be the hypermasculinity syndrome? I heard that. I don't remember whether I defended myself at that time or not, it's just that from then on I became a different person, becoming more and more quiet and taciturn. Rumors don't stop because of my silence. On the contrary, I was drawn into it, combined with my blessed appearance. From being a different person, I became a dangerous element. Lu Nuyen was the first person in many years who proactively approached me. Or you could say spooky. Thinking back, I was later inclined to satisfy all her requests at that time, except for compromising on a life that would soon pass away. Maybe I've been lonely for too long. I was immersed in the feeling of being relied on by others. It's just that when I raised my fist towards the hoodlums and schoolgirl puppets, I didn't think about it at all. Using violence to suppress violence cannot be considered a good action. This is a small alley between shops, with no surveillance cameras. Therefore, hitting people also becomes easier. Ko Tin Ha, stop. Lu Nuyen's voice rang out. I let go of the blond guy who had been beaten until his face was bruised in my hand, and in the distance was the silhouette of the blond guy's accomplices running away. Behind me was a girl who was so scared that she sat on the ground, sobbing. Lu Nuyen stood in front of me, her eyebrows slightly furrowed. How old are you and you're already following this pattern of using violence and tyranny? If you severely injure those scum, wouldn't you be in trouble yourself? She hovered with her waist down again, looking down at me. I bowed my head to listen to her, assuming all sorts of scary consequences. However, she was silent for a bit, then slowly flew to a position at eye level with me. I didn't see wrong. You are truly a kind, enthusiastic person. The weather was very cold, My hands were covered in the thug's snot, tears and blood. I felt like they were about to freeze. The girl behind didn't know when she left. I stood alone in this small alley, next to the ghost of my classmate, who had nothing to do with me. When she smiled, she had a slight dimple, wrinkled her nose, curled her eyes, and used an assertive tone to say that I was a good person. A similar feeling arose in my heart. I turned around and quickly walked out of the alley, returned to have dinner, and had an evening self-study session. I want to eat too. Can you make it for me? Lu Nuyen hovered behind me, not seeing the faint smile on my lips. But my good mood didn't last long. The next day, when I walked into class, I noticed everyone's eyes looking at me were full of glaring ridicule and contempt. Yesterday, he was near the back gate of the school and bullied a girl in a small alley. That girl ran out crying, wiping her tears. It was disgusting. Indeed, he is not a good person. If he has the ability, he would go find gangsters to deal with them. He only knows how to bully those who are easy to bully. In school, I fell into the vortex of rumors again. Even though I'm used to it, when I see Lu Nuyen next to me, stiff, I still feel like sighing. Even though many years have passed, how should I explain to her that scary speech is more than a simple dictionary definition? Cannot be understood simply as a footnote. It is a type of evil that is difficult to eradicate, like a disease that cannot be cured. Perhaps the first person to say that was just adding a little conjecture to what he saw. But when it comes to someone else, perhaps the meaning is different. I don't intend to argue. That alley had no surveillance cameras, which meant that regardless of right or wrong, I couldn't explain it clearly myself. Or perhaps my violent behavior at that time really frightened the girl. She sees me as a bad person, it's not too much. In the morning, Lu Nuyen kept wandering around with other people. She leaned close to their ear and said something. It wasn't until school ended at noon that she became silent. At lunch, she folded her arms and hugged her pillow, floating alone in the living room. It's so sad, she said. It turns out being misunderstood is such a scary thing. They don't know anything. I wanted to tell them that you were just acting chivalrous, but they couldn't hear my voice. No wonder you didn't say anything, it was on purpose. It turns out that getting others to listen to what you say is so difficult. 3 days later, Lu Nuyen hid inside the wall and for the first time did not accompany me to school. Maybe it's because these past few days, explicit or implicit rumors have made her feel uncomfortable. I didn't ask any more questions and went to school by myself. While reading a book, in the morning I collapsed on the table, catching up on sleep since Lu Nuyen appeared. I no longer sleep in during morning self-study time. She will patiently advise. It's my last semester. I'm about to take the university entrance exam. People in the past studied hard for 12 years, weren't they just waiting for the day to pass the exam? Listen to me, study seriously, 1 point can determine the speed of your B score in college. When I'm distracted in class, sleepy during the test, and try to skip self-study at night, Lu Nuyen will make a shrill sound, an echoing sound, making me study hard. Ko Tin Ha, study hard. I still hope to go see the university with you. Aren't you a ghost? You can always go to college if you want, but it's not the same, she said. I mainly want to see how Ko Tin Ha is in college. Remembering Lu Nuyen, the drowsiness disappeared. Most of the time while I was daydreaming, I suddenly discovered that the classroom was completely quiet. The homeroom teacher led a female student to stand on the podium. Her eyes were looking around the classroom, looking for something, until she saw me in the corner of the classroom, then her eyes suddenly lit up. This is the learning commissioner of class 1201, as selfless as snow. Today she came to thank you for your courage in defending what is right, the homeroom teacher said. Eyes carrying a smile, directed towards me. Ko tin ha, teachers know you are a good child. The whole class's eyes turned towards me again, only this time there was much less malice. Like snow, I promptly opened my mouth. My voice was gentle. That day, I was planning to go to the bookstore outside the school to determine the number of exercise books, but I didn't expect to encounter some thugs harassing me. At an important moment, my classmate Ko tin ha helped me with the thugs. At that time, I was so scared that I ran away without saying anything. When I returned, I had a high fever. It wasn't until last night, when I returned to school, that I realized that running away had caused great damage to my friend's reputation. Classmate Ko tin ha. Classmate Ko tin ha, I apologize and thank you. Bok Nu Tuet looked into my eyes, seriously, and finished the last sentence. The homeroom teacher took the lead in clapping his hands. There was a sound of clapping and shaking in the classroom. Then the sound became louder and louder, as if welcoming the birth of a hero, or the destruction of a villain. After Bok Nu Tuet left, the teacher on the podium said something. I had no interest in anything. Looking at the empty desk next to me, I couldn't help but think. Lu Likyan remembered the last words she said at lunch that day. It's okay, at least I know Ko tin ha is a good person. I will help you. I skipped the remaining classes. When returning to the rental apartment, Lu Likyan walked out from the wall. Her figure is even paler than before. As soon as she saw me, she loudly lectured, Ko tin ha, do you dare to skip class? I asked again, what's wrong with you? She lowered her head, looked at her transparent body for a long time, then raised her head and giggled. Oh wow, I accidentally learned this dream entry skill. I didn't expect it to be so tiring. During the last 3 months of high school, my situation suddenly became much better. Tu Nu Tuet is a very strange person. She looks weak, but when she talks and works, she has an irresistible demeanor. For example, now, she stubbornly became my friend. She is the class's study committee member, also ranked in the top 3 of her grade, and now also becomes my tutor. She didn't find it strange that I sometimes talked to the air, because she knew Liu's existence like yen. She ran into my dream and told me the story about you with a pitiful look. She asked me, can I help you explain clearly? She also calls herself a ghost and can't stand injustice in the world. I looked at Lu and Yen next to me. She was awkwardly counting how many petals there were in the vase. I let out a sigh. I accept Tu Nu Tuet's good intentions. Anyway, now I really want to take the university entrance exam. Thanks to her blessing, this was the first time in my 3 years of high school that I entered the cafeteria and faced the surprised eyes of a group of people. I followed Tu Nu Tuet to get rice. Today the restaurant has beef stew with tomatoes. This is the dish that Lu Likyan likes the most. She was staring at our food tray when she noticed my eyes falling on a place that looked like no one was there. Tu Nu Tuet asked me, do you want to eat? I nodded and told her that Liu's face was like Yen's and was about to fall into the plate. She smiled slightly without saying anything. In the evening, she sent me a picture with instructions on how to choose materials and engrave words for the tablet. I read it in the book and placed what I wanted in front of her tablet. She will receive, instead of burning. This method is more environmentally friendly and convenient. I will prepare the materials in these few days. When memorizing, you also practice engraving. Think of it as practicing your calligraphy. I looked intently at this passage, for the first time wanting to know what books Tu Nu Tuet reads every day. Tu Nu Tuet and I communicate more every day. In addition to studying, we also have to engrave words. The homeroom teacher felt very happy that my achievements were stable and improving. For the first time, I became a good example and was praised. The eyes of my classmates looking at me also became more friendly. Tu Nu Tuet's homeroom teacher, although not very happy, Tu Nu Tuet has a very stubborn personality. Saying she wouldn't let her help me study, she immediately transferred to the 3rd grade where I studied. So her homeroom teacher reluctantly agreed. Lu Like Yen is very happy. Every day she stares at me carving the tombstone, and carefully counts the things she wants me to offer her. Later, then I will offer you a set of real exam questions and tests. Immediately, if you don't finish it, I won't give you anything, he finished speaking, in a good mood. I heard her angrily call my name and say she would enter my dream to hunt me down. My life passed smoothly for a moment. I complacently thought that I was no different from normal people until I entered the classroom. Saw 3 big letters written on the blackboard in red chalk, murderer. Perhaps kindness during this time has made me weak. Once again noticing the suspicious eyes of my classmates, I felt bitter and uncomfortable for the first time in a long time. I don't know if this feeling is because I once again became a prime suspect, or because my previous karma was added to my first year of high school. I want to change. Before leaving, I told my mother my goal for today was to make new friends. Mom was very happy, saying she trusted me. 2 hours later, my mother received a call from the police station, accusing me of intentionally pushing a man into the street, causing him to have an accident. Afterwards, the parents apologized to the injured man and compensated him a large amount of money. Even though I tried to keep the information secret, rumors that I intentionally killed people still spread around me. I told my parents I was innocent. That man intended to steal someone else's things. In an urgent situation, my actions were faster than my thinking. I forgot to control my force, and unintentionally pushed him out of the way. Thinking back later, I should have shouted first at that time. My impulsiveness not only cost me, what hurt me more was that my parents were also criticized and discussed. As time passed, the views of my parents who trusted me gradually changed. So, when the high school admission results were announced, my parents rented me a room, paying rent for 3 years. I never returned home again, because there was supervision. The person who wrote that letter was quickly arrested. They are 2 male students of 1st grade. Previously, they studied in the same middle school as me and heard about my story. Furthermore, he also has feelings for Tu Nu Tuet. So, they thought of this way to let Tu Nu Tuet see my true face and also get a little angry. The result was to miss school and go home to reflect for 3 days, and had to publicly apologize to me in 3rd grade. The results of this treatment clearly made others in 1st grade unhappy. During the evening self-study session, when they finished their break and returned to school, 1st graders rushed into the classroom, saying they wanted to stand up for them. The physical education class president and I also went to the same middle school. He pointed at my nose and scolded me for being a monster, saying to his incredulous 3rd grade classmates, "He's been killing people since he was 13 years old. Do you really believe he's a good person?" Tu Nu Tuet stood in front of them to explain to me, and was also criticized by 1st graders. They said, "You went to bed with him, right? How much fun did it take for you to betray your classmate of 3 years to protect him?" Lu Like Yen punched and kicked them, but her limbs passed through their bodies without strength. They approached me. During the jostling, the vase filled with fresh flowers rolled on the floor, shattering over people's heads. I see Liu's sad face like Yen's, but ghosts have no tears. The sadness in those beautiful eyes seemed to be about to flow out. Tu Nu Tuet with a mournful expression rushed forward and carefully picked up the flower. My fist also hit the leader's face. Maybe I should explain first now, but I'm rude, dark, and weird. I am a dangerous element. This is the only way I can use it. When the physical education class leader hugged his face and fell to the ground, the rest of the class reacted to stop him. Just one step forward, several male students sitting in the back row blocked their faces. Many people bully, few people are not good. Are good students of this quality? Their tone was full of mockery, so angry that the other person shouted loudly, "What do you mean? Are you helping the murderer?" "About you, you have seen it, sir." Nutuet stood up, looked at the flower, and said, "Or did the person he killed dream of telling you?" One of the main characters was suspended from school, saying everyone knows. If you don't believe me, go investigate at the experimental school. Class leader Sonak John suddenly spoke up and said coldly, "Whoever is in favor must present evidence. If you intend to accuse my classmates, please make an official announcement first." He walked up to me, looked at the first grade sports director who was still lying on the ground and said, "I will report the details of today's incident to the teacher, let the teacher make arrangements. Ko Tin-ha hit someone, if you need to apologize, we will apologize. But personally I don't feel he hit wrongly. In addition, the vase you just knocked over belongs to Liu's classmate Yen. She just passed away not long ago, you say tonight. Did she come to see you?" Hearing that, the faces of everyone in first grade became more unsightly. Someone unconsciously blurted out, "Bad luck." The entire third grade class was excited and stood up at the same time. I passed everyone, grabbed his collar, and pulled him in front of me. I said, "Sorry, otherwise I will pull out every one of your teeth." I heard everyone take a cold breath. Someone still wanted to say something, but as soon as they uttered a syllable, they were stopped by my eyes. The person under his hand trembled like sifting rice and said tremblingly, "I'm sorry, Lu is like Yen." Tu Nutuet said, "Her name is Lu Nu Yen." "Sorry, Lu like Yen." Seeing that there was no gain here, other people in the class helped people, still complaining of pain. The fitness commissioner hurriedly left. Sonak John pulled Tu Nutuet together to discuss the solution with her. Just like Tuet giving me the flower in her hand. When my classmate stood up and returned to his seat, he patted me on the shoulder and said, "Good fight." The girl in the front row next to me placed a mineral water bottle full of water. I put the flower there, looking straight into Liu's eyes like Yen. "Good job." She smiled brightly and said, "Ko Tin-ha, you are really handsome." In the end, the incident was divided equally, with both sides receiving 50 lashes. I apologized to the sports committee, the person who caused trouble in class apologized to third grade, and Snow White. Snow White has transferred to our class. Sonak John's performance went from top of the table to second place. He smiled and said, "The whole class's average score shines thanks to the arrival of Snow White." On the spring equinox, the simple tablet was finally carved. I offered Lu and Yen a bowl of beef stew with tomatoes. Not long after taking off the thick winter clothes, the second simulation exam began. Bok Nutuet was as nervous as if I was about to take the university entrance exam, constantly checking to see if I had brought enough things. She said, "The second simulation performance is closest to the university entrance exam, my achievements are related to hers. The possibility of going to the path of teaching and education in the future." Ko Tin-ha, after finishing the final exam, I came to them Tu Lam, "I have something to say." A girl suddenly appeared, said this sentence, and then ran away. "Oh oh oh," the voices of Bok like Tuet and Lu like Yen rang out at the same time. Bok's face was full of teasing. Lu like Yen has no expression. The bell was about to ring out, interrupting my explanation. Tu Tuet waved her hand to wish me well. Lu Nuyen expressed that in order to control herself, the idea of not letting Kwang Min cheat me did not intend to follow through. leaving me alone in the exam room writing diligently for 3 days. When the exam ended, I felt like I did quite well. When I was in a very good mood and preparing to go home, Lu Nguyen suddenly asked me carefully, "Is then Tu Lam not going?" I indicated that I did not intend to go. Lu Nguyen clearly had a look on her face and immediately said with a worried look, "You should still go. What if she's been waiting for a long time?" On the way, she suddenly warned me with a worried tone, "Don't fall in love, you're about to take the university entrance exam. If you really like it, you have to wait until after the university entrance exam." I looked at her with a serious face. I don't like her, nor do I intend to fall in love. She was stunned, then became happy again, then to hide her embarrassment, she deliberately said with a serious face, "Then you have to refuse her properly. Refuse a bit tactfully, don't affect her mood for the university entrance exam." She was confused and refused my request, wanting her to come with me. So, before leaving, I said, "Don't think anymore, wait until I come home with you." She blinked then smiled brightly, "Yes." But I didn't expect, my girl wasn't there to tell me. She was to give me evidence of the truth of Liu's death like Yen. When I walked out from Then Tu Lam, Liu like Yen was squatting on the side of the road to Kian Hong Sunset. The beginning of April fell upon her, making her look like a fragile dream. On the way home, I didn't say a word. Liu like Yen initially chatted about what to eat tonight. Seeing that I wasn't interested, she also remained silent. That night, I made offerings to her. She brought the food, sat across from the tea table and asked me with resentment, "Do you regret it?" I was stunned. She went on to say, "Regret turning her down." I shook my head, thought for a moment then asked her, "What kind of person do you think Quach Ton Ton is?" "Quach Ton Ton?" She tilted her head and woke up. "Oh, you mean the homeroom teacher? It's very good. Last semester, he temporarily took over our class, and didn't complain at all. Relationships with classmates are also good, and he also likes photography. Winter break, and..." She suddenly stopped, a dreamy look on her face. "What did you do on winter break?" I continued to tell her, "During winter break, I asked you to take pictures. You all went to Famkin Park." She looked at me in surprise as if she wanted to ask me how I knew, but in the next second, she suddenly realized something and whispered to herself, "Famkin Park is where he asked me to go there. He killed me." The girl told me the truth. Her name is Ha Mu, she is Quach Ton Ton's ex-girlfriend, and was also Quach Ton Ton's student before he took over our class. She accidentally saw on Quach Ton Ton's phone a hidden photo album with a photo of Liu like Yen. At first, she thought Quach Ton Ton was having an affair. Later, she discovered that the angles of these photos were all very strange, most of them focused on the lower body and chest. The more she flipped through, the more terrified she became. At the end, she saw a photo that she couldn't forget for the rest of her life. Liu like Yen, her head covered in blood, lying on the grass, next to Quach Ton Ton. He raised his hands high and took the only photo with Liu like Yen. She collapsed, her mind told her to report to the police immediately. But a young girl, only 17 or 18 years old, was still blinded by love at that time. She decided to pretend she didn't know anything and move on. She firmly believed that Quach Ton Ton loved her, that's why she didn't kill her. Until that day, the argument between first and third grade, the flower vase was broken along with that sentence, "The flower vase belongs to Liu's classmate like Yen. She just passed away not long ago. Tell me, does she come to find you at night?" Her already tormented heart was completely broken. She copied that sinful album. Right now, those photos are sitting quietly on my phone. Liu like Yen, right now I really want to rush to school and kill that beast. But the victim is you, so I want to ask you before the truth is announced to everyone. I helped you break all of his fingers. How do you feel? Lu Nuyen looked at me bewilderedly and nodded. The devil has no tears, so now I cry for her. Before Qingming Festival, Quach Tan Ton was arrested. I asked Tu Nu Tuet and Sonak John to report the case to the police station. As for me, I arranged to meet Quach Tan Ton in a small alley without surveillance cameras. Break 10 of his fingers with your own hands. At first he cursed me. I said, I am an inhumane animal. After that, he started whining and begging me to forgive him. I didn't pay attention, just stood up and covered his mouth. Then, forcefully stepped on his palm, once, twice, 3 times. Ko Tin Ha, stop now. The police are here. Liu's voice like yen rang out. I turned back to look at her. She was still smiling calmly, not looking gloomy. I bent down and whispered into Quach Tan Ton's ear, Lu Yen is watching, right behind me. She's clapping her hands and laughing loudly. When the police found Quach Tan Ton, both of his hands were amputated. He panicked and yelled at the police. Seeing that she was laughing at this outcome, although he tried to appear mentally unstable, the psychiatrist determined he was normal. He was still sentenced and sent to prison. Ha Miu, the person who covered for him, also confessed and became an unfavorable witness. Although both of their crimes are lighter, they still have to pay a worthy price. The new homeroom teacher is a serious teacher. The first day she arrived, she brought a fresh purple iris instead of the hydrangea from the day before. Lu Nuyen sat next to me and smiled with her head shaking, her hand resting on her chin. Ko Tin Ha, the black thermos cup is so ugly, can we change it to another one? No, this one holds up and beats well. Although the perpetrator was arrested, Lu Nuyen has not yet escaped. My promise isn't really to catch the killer. How gentle of a girl am I really? Lu Nuyen floats in the living room. The weather has gradually become hotter, ghosts probably possess heavenly advantages. Just get close and you don't need to turn on the air conditioner. Next week is graduation photo time. When Lu Nuyen passed away, she was wearing winter clothes and saw her classmates all change to short-sleeved shirts and short pants. She also made a fuss about wearing a new dress. So I opened a cupboard filled with things that have only been used once for 100 years. And she chose a dress for 3 hours. She loves to ask my opinion. I thought about how she looked wearing these dresses and honestly said, all of them are beautiful, I think each one suits you very well. She was silent for a moment, then jumped up like an arrow and immediately hid in the ceiling. Graduation photos were taken on a beautiful sunny day. I wore the outfit that Lu Nuyen chose for me, a blue hoodie and checkered pants. She was wearing a long blue dress standing next to me. Neither the camera nor the mirror could show her, so I planned to use my eyes to remember. When my classmates took free photos, Tu Nu Tuet pulled my hand back when So Nak Kien raised his camera and pointed it at us. We once again agreed to give way. So Nak Kien looked speechless. You two be careful. He didn't know that between us stood Lu Nuyen with a bright smile, holding up the V symbol in front of the camera. The 2 days of the university exam were very hot. I went to the exam venue alone. Lu Nuyen next to me kept asking if I had brought enough things, telling me not to worry. Based on my second test score, even if I don't get into a top school, I can still reach the threshold of a top school. Tu Nu Tuet grabbed me outside the exam room and repeated it again. The main idea was that if I did not test well, the education sector would lose a future star like her. So Nak Kien stood next to him, criticizing his assignment. Teachers should just be teachers, don't act like you're saving the world. Chinese ended, the last subject rang out. Thousands of students walked out of the exam room. first step into a new phase. I followed the flow of people toward the school gate, slowly recalling the memories with Lu Nguyen's ghost after this month of living together. There is no doubt that she saved me. I was already abandoned by everyone, no one ever expected me to do anything. Anyway, whatever I do makes others worry that it's a bad thing, but Lu Nguyen says I'm a good person. She also looked forward to seeing me go to college. She was with me, hoping everyone would hear my defense, admitting my innocence. She said I'm a good person. Stepping out of the school gate, I immediately saw Lu Nguyen floating above the crowd. She waved vigorously at me and said, "Happy graduation, Ko Tin Ha." Summer had just begun when I received a letter. It's a letter sent to me by Lu Nguyen, who is still alive. At the moment of receiving that letter, Lu Nguyen suddenly sat up, her bright eyes looking at me. "Ko Tin Ha, I have to be reincarnated. I don't understand anything, but instinctively resist this." Her eyes fell on the letter in my hand. At that moment, I suddenly realized that this letter was her obsession. "Open up," she said. I shook my head, walked into the kitchen and wanted to burn it. Lu Nguyen did not stop, just quietly looked at me before I turned on the gas stove. "Ko Tin Ha, I always have to leave." A feeling of frustration filled me. I couldn't help but turn around and roar, "Why? Didn't you tell me to invite you in?" She didn't say anything, just looked at me quietly as if she put all the choices in my hands. We all don't know if we know that we have an attachment and choose to ignore it. Will it affect Lu Nguyen? Furthermore, she was right. I cannot stop her from moving on to a new stage of life. So, I tremblingly opened the envelope. Inside fell a button, which looked like it belonged to a uniform. On the pink letter paper is Lu Nguyen's soft handwriting, writing, "Hello classmate Ko Tin Ha, I'm Lu Nguyen. Before, when I was almost hit by a ball while walking on the street, you helped me. At that time, I lost this button. Now return it to its rightful owner. Another thing, the image of you saving me is really cool, completely different from what others say. It's certainly impossible to recognize you through other people's words. Hi, so I've been observing you for a long time, probably 10,000% sure. You're a good person. Wait until the new semester starts, I'll let everyone know this. I wonder if you can become my friend then." Lu Nguyen didn't know when she appeared in front of me. When she reached out to touch me, tears pierced her palm and fell onto the letter. The sound of cicadas outside the window became increasingly louder, the temperature in the room gradually increased as if it wanted to burn the soul. "Ko Tin Ha, I don't just want to be friends with you anymore." Lu Nguyen disappeared in the sunlight. This beautiful dream that lasted half a year finally woke up. After Lu Nguyen disappeared, that house's 3-year lease expired. After that, I returned home again. Mom and Dad have a new son. The little boy was so small, he couldn't walk unsteadily, he wasn't afraid of a tall monster like me. On the contrary, it stuck with me very much. Wherever I go, it follows. Parents are very worried. Even though I got into a pretty good university and had normal friends like Tu Nu Tuet and Sonak John, they were still afraid that I would suddenly go crazy. When college started, we all breathed a sigh of relief. They sent away a monster like me, and I also escaped the irreparable piece of candy. When packing my luggage, I packed Lu Nguyen's tablet in there. It is wrapped in layers of clothes, considered materialistic. It wasn't right that she left me, I was her last relic. My younger brother is looking for treasure in my room. My parents went out to socialize and had to leave it for me to look after. He held up the photo I took with Tu Nu Tuet and ran to point at me in the photo and called brother, then pointed at Tu Nu Tuet and called sister. Finally, it pointed to the empty space between us and asked, Who is this? I stared at that empty spot. For a moment, I seemed to see her, wearing a long blue dress, smiling and posing. So I said, her name is Lu Nguyen. She is my first love.